There he is, John Kurtz, Kansas City Sports Network. John, we appreciate your time. Your last newsletter, looking at the possibility, are you suggesting that Notre Dame is now in the corner of both the ACC and maybe the Big 12?
Well, it kind of looks like it, at least as it relates to the playoff fight. And I say kind of. If you believe Ross Dellinger, who I know you guys are well acquainted with, and does an awesome job. In his last piece about this fight going on about the college football playoff format, he mentioned that directly. I guess it makes sense in a way, obviously, with the ACC. They probably should be aligned with the ACC because they're a member of the ACC outside of football, but it still kind of surprised me. And, I know in the article, the Big 12 took the high road on publicly commenting, while the ACC was just no holds barred. Let's throw every quote out there we can and demand that we even get 3 auto bids. It was just really intriguing to me that it got mentioned in there like, hey, and it was behind closed doors, right? Notre Dame's not doing this out publicly, but that behind closed doors, Notre Dame's new athletic director has been speaking out against this format that grants 4 automatic bids to both the Big Ten and the SEC, because Notre Dame, that's pretty powerful. Again, as I said in the newsletter, like, does it actually change anything? Like, no. If the Big Ten and the SEC want to do this, if they truly want to do this, like, nothing is really going to stop them, I suppose, short of Congress or the president, which is now in some ways on the table. But they'll do it. But Notre Dame is at least like serious resistance that has a lot of respect. That's a very respected resistance. And the fact that symbolically, to me, they're basically joining up with not just the Big 12 and the ACC, but really like everybody else. Everybody. Who out there, show of hands, who out there besides Big Ten and SEC fans actually likes the idea of the 4 automatic bids for both of the Power 2 conferences? Nobody wants that. Nobody likes that. And so the fact that Notre Dame is at least behind closed doors trying to fight for that a little bit, to me is very nice, somewhat powerful, because like Notre Dame could just sit back. Look, they're going to have a spot no matter what. Like any of these, they're going to be just okay, totally fine. There will always be an at-large spot available for Notre Dame if they're going to be ranked as high as they need to be. They're typically going to get the benefit of the doubt from whatever is going to be doing the rankings, if that's a computer, if that's a human, especially if it's a human. Like, they're fine. They don't really need to do any of this. So the fact that they are in a fight that many people have just assumed would be a loss from the get-go with the Big Ten and the SEC does say something to me.
Well, if it's interesting on Notre Dame. So if you do the math, there's 16 teams in the Big 12. There's 17 teams in the ACC. So that's 33. There's 16 in the SEC and 18, and that's 34. Well, Notre Dame could, lean over there and cause a tie, I guess, broken by the pro temp, I guess. I don't know how they would do it if you voted just along party lines there, but I don't think the automatic qualifiers, like Notre Dame, they're kind of good in any format, but even still, if there's 4 automatic qualifiers and they're on the bubble in a lot of years, that's going to screw them, right? Where, if they're the 15th ranked team out of 16, but you have to go to number 16 to get that 4th Big Ten team, or maybe even below to 21, then Notre Dame could potentially get really screwed there.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So I guess maybe I hadn't fully fleshed all this out. Maybe there is some actual legitimate reason for Notre Dame to be to be thinking about that, and at least just be involved in. I guess the other piece of this is, we know that Notre Dame has spoken up against the idea of what the current proposal has been, which is the 4-4-2-2-1-1. Okay, but we don't know what specifically Notre Dame is trying to bring to the table, because another piece of the reporting lately, it was not in the latest Dellinger article, it came afterward, was that the Big Ten, or rather the Big 12 and the ACC, have been able to present like some alternate proposals. So I guess a part of this could be maybe Notre Dame has some specific ideas about what they would like to see there, and maybe it is a little bit more of them just getting involved in the idea of, hey, do we have any ability to actually shape what this is going to look like and put something together that is going to be ultimately better for us? I don't, the way you frame it when you're sending out a Big 12 newsletter, right, is like, hey, Notre Dame is on the same side of the Big 12. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's like they're all linking arms and singing Kumbaya with Brett Yormark, on the way there. I'm not necessarily suggesting that. It's just that, to me, it was a powerful message that, like, symbolically, nobody seems to be really happy about the way the Big Ten and the SEC have just tried to, like, shoehorn this thing through, like basically bully this through. And there have been a bunch of tactics. I actually thought Josh Pate made a really good point when he pointed out, like, we had that report floated. I think it was from Heather Dinich at one point that was like, hey, they're going to maybe how we determine who gets what bids will be through partially TV eyeballs, right? Basically like a brand rating, and the conference with the most TV eyeballs is going to get an extra team in. And he suggested, well, that was never actually going to happen, but they float that out there to get you all mad about that so that you'll be happy when they then pull back and just go back to what they wanted to do initially. And it's like, we've gone through, they put the 4 auto bid out there at first and then kind of pulled back when there was a bunch of public backlash, and then they waited a while, just waited for everything to die down. And then they start floating it out again. And now they float out a way worse idea to try and get you all, little deception there, get you all upset about that. And now they come back to this again. And so it does seem to me to be a little bit of Notre Dame, just like, hey, like, guys, come on, man. I know that you have all the power and you have all the cards here, but like, as I said, let's not push more toothpaste out of the tube that we don't have to, that can't be put back. And even connecting this all more broadly, it just feels like the presidential commission and now some public pressure from like congressmen who are tweeting about that, basically come at me, bro, to the SEC and the Big Ten. It does feel like a lot of people feel like this is like a point of critical mass where, like, if we don't stand up to what is happening throughout the sport, not just with like NIL and the craziness going on there, but what is being forced through by Fox, ESPN, the Big Ten, and the SEC, then like we're never going to get some of this back. So it's kind of do or die.
John, when it comes to the 2 playoff automatic bids that the Big 12 would get under that specific scenario, you mentioned that you were initially for it, and then you're part of the, hey, let's fight this while we can, because there's going to be no fighting really left to do here pretty soon. But how much did you battle with that? Because I've tried to put myself in the position of Brett Yormark and the conference leaders, and like, man, how much do you fight versus liking what you can get? And they're getting paid the big bucks to figure those things out. But I've found myself in a tug of war. How much of a tug of war have you had in trying to figure out what the best path forward is in terms of fighting or just accepting their fate?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. There's been a lot of waffling back and forth on it. I mean, because to be honest, and this is not, I guess I'm not necessarily proud of this, but at first my take was you should probably just take the 2, and it's because I didn't really have the stomach for the fight. Like, I just kind of resigned myself to, like, hey, this is the world we live in. There's nothing that can really stop them now that it's written into the contract of the next iteration of the playoff that the SEC and Big Ten can just bully whatever it is that they want there. Like, taking the 2 actually doesn't seem like that bad of a deal for the Big 12, when this year, had we had a 16-team playoff, BYU still would have been on the outside looking in, which they shouldn't have been. I think we've all kind of realized that as you look through. If you're doing a blind resume test, like, BYU should have gotten more consideration, but they got virtually none. And instead, all the controversy was about SEC schools and then I guess a little bit Miami. That tells you like how much respect you're probably going to get on a year in, year out basis here. So in some ways with this fight, not only are you risking that the Big Ten and the SEC just say, well, to hell with this, we're just going to go do our own thing. But you're also risking that then they're like, okay, fine, we won't do auto bids. Everybody, you just got to fight and earn your way in. And we saw last year how the Big 12 can get treated when that happens. So unless you start actually winning some playoff games, turning Arizona State's close calls with Texas into wins, you might be in trouble there as well. But I just think like at the end of the day, I was just like, I can't not fight against the Big Ten and the SEC. If others are taking up arms, and like, again, looking at the rat-a-tat of quotes that was coming out there, just bam, bam, bam from everybody in the ACC, I was like, oh, okay, like the ACC's got the stomach for this, man. They're ready for this. And I was a little surprised because like Jim Phillips, to me, has always been a little wishy-washy, but this seemed like a pretty strong show of force from the ACC, which I guess makes sense because, had we had a 16-team playoff last year, they're probably getting 3 in, assuming that Miami gets in there. So I can understand how they would be a little more motivated to publicly come out and fight that. It is a bit trickier probably right now if you're Brett Yormark. Because the thing with the Big 12 and the ACC, and I know this turns into a Big 12 ACC thing really fast. I mean, the ACC as it's currently constructed, there's never really been much of an argument in terms of like, they obviously have the bigger and better brands there than the Big 12. Like, I don't think anybody's legitimately trying to argue that. The argument there has always been about stability. And the ACC, I really think, has set itself up now for like, all right, you got 5 years, and then it's going to blow up one way or another. That's always been the big part of the debate. But as it stands right now, if you're talking about who on a year in, year out basis has a better shot to be earning multiple playoff bids, it's absolutely the ACC because of the brands they have. They're going to get more respect. Miami's going to get more respect than BYU when you're fighting there for those spots. So it is probably more of a risk, to be honest, for the Big 12 if they're going to join this. But like, I'm seeing everybody do it. I'm a little charged up on Cody Campbell being the co-chair of the presidential commission that's being put together. It just feels like there are some things that have given me a little bit more hope. And so I can't, people are standing there and they're handing me a spear and telling me to get in line like it's Braveheart and go out there on the front line. Like I gotta take it, man. I can't sit that one out.
John, I think the thing the Big 12 and ACC need to do is they need to lock arms. I mean, we just did a segment right before you of me like doing a Big 12 ACC football, crossover thing, a one game in the non-con. If the Big 10 and SEC are going to do it, you might as well, so you can pick up some games and do those things. Now, again, it doesn't have as much cachet, but the more that they have separate agendas, the more they're going to find themselves bending to the will of those other two. I think they need to lock arms and just whatever differences they have are minor compared to the consequences.
I think it's a really good point. I think it would be pretty wise of everybody involved there. And I mean, a lot of it is just as simple as like what you're talking about with scheduling, because it feels like so much of this is moving toward, especially if now some of this will hinge back on the discussion we were just having. Okay, what happens with the future playoff format? But if the SEC and Big 10 get what they want, which is 4 auto bids, that's not just for the obvious of like wanting to get more teams in. It's also so they can ditch the conference championship game, but then have their 2 play-in games. And it's also so that they can feel vindicated in being able to, or just comfortable with being able to have a bunch of high-profile non-conference games, because they'll know, hey, even if we lose a bunch of high-profile non-conference games, we're still getting 4 spots. There's no risk. And we've already seen what they want to do there. I mean, they're talking incestually amongst each other, Big 10 and SEC, about we'll just get together. We'll have all our teams play each other. That's going to maximize TV interest right now. We don't need to be playing all these other teams. I suppose that the schools that still have rivals in the ACC will probably still do that. I mean, I guess we'll see. But they're going to start just cutting everybody else slowly out of the picture, right? And they want to even get rid of a selection committee to remove, God forbid we grant a little grace to a Big 12 or an ACC team that might not have the strength of schedule as an SEC team, but they will literally just game the system. So it's like you can't up your strength of schedule very much by playing SEC or Big 10 teams in the non-con because they're going to be busy playing each other, right? Like that's the way all of this is going. So yes, I think big picture, you want to link arms to try and fight some of that stuff from even happening. But if it does happen and go down the way that it looks like it more than likely will, you're going to need to play somebody, and it's going to be better for you to have some sort of agreement in place and to be able to get some of your better brands to play to just help each other out as much as you possibly can there.
Does K-State in this hypothetical have a natural ACC team, like a history or something that jumps out to you?
Boy, that's a good question.
Because everybody wants to play Miami and Florida State and Clemson, right? But when you actually break it down,
Florida State right now, everyone wants to play them now.
Yeah. Look at that easy win. But UCF, Miami, they're in the same state. That makes sense. But I think the with Paul's practice there was like there's just not a lot of natural, so you'd have to come up with stuff. So I was just curious if K-State had like some old rivalry with Syracuse or something like that, that they could build on.
The only thing that really jumped into my mind was, I mean, I know they just recently played in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, but like NC State, I feel like is kind of a kindred spirit sort of school, like ag school. Actually, the current university president at K-State, Richard Linton, he came from NC State. And a part of that was like, trying to find an ag school president, somebody who fit that bill. Athletic programs, I feel like sometimes like sneaky good, like better than people give them credit for. Certainly like Dave Doran with NC State football, maybe like a Bill Snyder light, kind of what he's been able to do there over a long sustained period of time with success. So that one comes to mind. I don't know. K-State had a home and home with Miami not all that long ago. I guess I say that. It was the Colin Klein era. I'm getting old, boys. But, they smacked around Miami a couple of times, beat them at Miami, and then really destroyed them at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. So I would certainly take up playing Miami again. But NC State, to me, is the one that I guess kind of jumps out there.
John, a couple of things. There's this, people love pecking orders. And when all the realignment in conferences started to change with Texas OU, and then eventually the Pac-12 falls apart, then breaks apart, there's this okay, you have the SEC, the Big Ten, either direction. Big Ten actually has a bigger TV deal. A lot of huge schools. The SEC, they will tell you, hey, we're good, and they backed it up. But then there's that, well, who's the third best Power 4 conference? I've thought it was the ACC. Not always, but I've just thought because they have a lot more alpha names, dogs, blue bloods. And now they're making more money despite a bunch of fracture between that conference. So is the ACC a better conference right now than the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a complicated question to answer because if you're going by, like I mentioned a moment ago, sheer football, brand power, which is, we all hate it, but that is the best currency that there is in college athletics. Probably not the way that it should be, but it's the way that it is. And to some extent, that's the way college athletics always have been. If that's the currency, then yeah, obviously the ACC definitely has that in spades over the Big 12. Obviously we know about Florida State. You look at, Clemson this year has drawn a lot of hype preseason about being a potential national championship contender. Miami just signed the number 1 recruit for the class of 2026. They definitely win the brand battle in spades. The argument, I think, for a long time, if you were going to be more on the Big 12 side of things, was well, yeah, okay, but how much does that mean when you're openly fighting 4 lawsuits in a couple different states, and you've got one of your schools is literally in a public board meeting that's being streamed, just saying that they're going to leave you, they're going to ditch you, get your house in order. It's always been the stability thing with the ACC, and they have some more now in the short term, but they also kind of just signed up for their own death almost in 2030. So if you're going to factor that in, now we're having a completely different discussion here. As far as the money goes, my thing on the money was I'm not really that surprised that they're, at $3 to $5 million ahead, basically in average payout right now per team than where the Big 12's at. But that's going to change so much because they've got the brand initiative and the success initiative coming in now. So I know the Ross Dellinger reports, I think, were the teams at the bottom could be losing up to $7 million per year off of that payout. So my take on that was okay, well, if we're going to compare money, and if the ACC really wants to beat its chest about money, what's probably going to happen is that Florida State, Clemson, Miami, I guess maybe this year, North Carolina with Bill Belichick viewers, if he makes it to game 1, we'll see. But, they're going to line their pockets a little bit more because of the brand initiative, the success initiative. And then you're going to have 3 or 4 schools that are doing much better than everybody in the Big 12 and the rest of the ACC. But 80 to 90% of the ACC is going to be at or below Big 12 levels in terms of payout. So it's really just a bunch of teams that are in the same boat minus a couple really big brands that are still there in the ACC and that are the cause of the instability. So I don't know. I don't get too hung up on the money part. If you ask me, if you really, hey, gun to my head, you got to give an answer. Forget all this nuance. You want to talk for 20 minutes. Just give me an answer. Which one's the better conference? I think the football brand power speaks for itself with the ACC right now. It's just how long is that conference going to still exist and be a thing? And right now, the Big 12's game has kind of just been one of survival, man. Just hang around, wait for other stuff to blow up, collect everybody else, and keep on moving.
The other question that you have to ask is post-expansion, the Big 12, obviously their brand took a hit, losing the schools that they've lost over both of the different realignments that they've had to go through. But additive, what was better for their conferences, I would argue that what the Big 12 added was better for their conference than what the ACC added. Not SMU necessarily. I think SMU actually was kind of a fit when you think about everything about that school and a lot of the ACC schools. But Stanford and Cal were just kind of all right, might as well. That's how it's always felt to me.
Well, they had to end up somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess Washington State and Oregon State did not. John, last thing, and I know we got to go. Brett Yormark has made more money last year with his salary, whatever else the structure, than even Greg Sankey. Did he earn it?
there's a part of me that just wants to say, like, almost in perpetuity, I've got to kind of say Brett Yormark's earned whatever they're paying him just because of what he pulled off with the I'm going to say heist isn't really fair, I guess, but by winning I'm going to say by pulling away the four corners, but really what it is just back to the TV deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really like back to when he was first on the job, like getting in with that TV deal when he did, which set in place everything that happened after that. You got to give him credit too for like getting in, working on Colorado, twisting Colorado loose and, pulling them off, which further destabilized the Pac-12. There were other things in there too. It's just, with the big picture thinking of that, like he kept the conference alive. Unless it gets way out of hand, I'm going to have a hard time saying that Brett Yormark is not earning whatever money that he's being paid just because he kept the conference alive and kept it moving. And I have these debates with people a lot because I know there are a lot of people that get frustrated with some of the things that happen in the conference that they don't like. And I will be the first to admit, I was really critical of the Big 12, like when they had the tiebreaker issue a couple of years ago when let's call a spade, man. They didn't have it written well. It was messed up. There was a typo. So it led to a huge issue. And then they changed it in the middle of the season and then gaslit everybody and said they didn't. That's not great. But I think it's representative of the fact that Brett Yormark comes from the entertainment industry. He's not somebody that had the background of like how you run things on a day-to-day basis, a conference and I am much more forgiving of those things because of what has happened in the big picture. And I can understand if you're a fan out there and you don't pay that much attention to that, or it's easy to forget that. And you're going to get frustrated about some of the little things there. Or you're like, why are they trying to play games in Mexico or whatever? This seems stupid. Like I'm all for him trying whatever. I think he's earned that credibility and I'm not going to crush them for paying him whatever it is that they're paying him. A part of it too that we could discuss is like, I think about the hand that he has to play versus the hand that Sankey has to play. Like, yeah. I don't know. I could dress up in a Darth Vader outfit with a freaking lightsaber and run the SEC. Like it's pretty easy, like with what Greg Sankey's been handed there. I'm not saying he's bad at his job, but you have so much more to work with. So Brett Yormark, look, I just said the ACC has the bigger brands. He's going to the table of all these Power Four commissioners with the lowest hand. I would give you a better example of it, but I'm not really a poker player. So I don't know what the perfect analogy is there. Someone would have to help me out with whatever Yormark's hand is that he's going to the table with, but it's not quite as good as the ACC and it's far worse than the pocket aces that Sankey has.
Thank you, buddy. Good stuff, John. Thank you very much. John Kurtz, Kansas City Sports Network with us on 365 Sports.